Today on the Topping Show, Vivek on the NSA not wanting to get a warrant for each spying instance, Tucker Carlson on Moscow subway versus American subway, Warren Buffett sold 10 million Apple shares in Q4. We break down his top trades as well as overall portfolio. Walmart may want to buy Vizio. National MS Society fires a 90-year-old volunteer for not knowing pronouns. And Delta forced to land a plane because of maggots. All of that and much more on the Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode of Topping Show is proudly sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, you see, that's a joke. If you're an IT leader or business owner, reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of February, so if you could click that button and let your friends know, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, going over to the business part of the podcast, you have Warren Buffett sold 10 million Apple shares. Now, he is perhaps the best trader in history, bar none. As the youth might say, he's a goat of trading, or also known as the greatest of all time. Perhaps only second to Nancy Pelosi, who, magically, she just is a more successful trader than Warren Buffett, the best of all time. I wonder how that is. Nevertheless, when you break down Warren Buffett's portfolio, he made some big changes in Q4, and we're just finding about them now. Now, one of the top changes in terms of increasing his shares comes in from Chevron, which, again, depending on where you live geographically, you may not know. It's one of the largest petroleum manufacturers, distributors, and drillers out there. So he increased his stake by 14%. Now they have $2.5 billion of Chevron stock in the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio. You also have OCY Occidental, which again is another petroleum company. Warren Buffett increased their stake by 2% to $251 million value. You have LSXMK getting a 12% increase in their holding, now up to $162 million. One of the biggest increases, bar none, is SiriusXM. And Warren Buffett just went and he increased his shares by 316%, giving them a current value of $153 million of SiriusXM stock, which to me, that's one of the biggest outliers that I've seen in terms of portfolio holdings. Because again, SiriusXM, I'm trying to remember what decade was it when Howard Stern was still relevant. I suppose he sees a lot of things we don't. Perhaps I'm suspecting he sees a lot of upside in the future. Now, keep in mind, right now, it's a podcapolis or some type of funny word for podcasts going out of business. A lot of them are losing money. And the companies that are buying exclusivity rights with those podcast creators, those relationships aren't as fruitful as they thought. The best use case, bar none, would be Joe Rogan. Spotify gave a exclusivity deal with him a couple years ago, and when that deal came up for renewal a couple weeks ago, they decided to no longer be mutually exclusive. So now Joe Rogan is now on all the other major podcast providers, including the ones such as Apple Podcast, as well as, it seems like all the ones are fading into existence. Stitcher used to be a popular one. They're no longer around. But so a Google Podcast, that's going to be renamed April 6th? That one's going to be going away. I think that we're going to force you to use YouTube Music or something like that. But it's no longer exclusive because I don't think that both parties are making as much money as they were hoping to, and they were decreasing their audience. So it's a pretty cutthroat industry, especially when it comes to music royalties. There's like 3 to 4 companies that own a majority of all the intellectual property when it comes to your favorite old bands and albums from back in the day. So even if they get these contracts with those companies, because of course those companies just get to print money, basically they own the intellectual property, right? They do a license agreement where they make a certain percentage or amount of money per time the video or the music is played. So when you look at companies like Spotify, a lot of that money going to Spotify from customers, it's going right back to the people who own the intellectual property. So SiriusXM, they've been pushing hard to increase their viewership throughout the years. To me, they are almost stuck in a rut in terms of anecdotally speaking, my experience with SiriusXM was it came free with the General Motors product. So I got a used Chevy Cruze for my first vehicle, which I loved because it had 3 pedals to stick shift, as all vehicles should have by default. And as a certified used, you got like a little subscription for a couple months free SiriusXM. Truth be told, I don't know anyone actually pays for SiriusXM, but I knew it from that contract and that relationship. But they're really just known for Howard Stern, who's decreasing in popularity. Granted, he's still one of the top performers out there, but to me, that's one of the biggest outliers. Now, you also have an increase of Berkshire Hathaway holdings in LXMA that increased 17%, and that's at $107 million of value right now. And then you go to the things where they just cashed out. So Warren Buffett, and obviously he's the owner of Berkshire Hathaway, they got rid of all of their Globe Life stock, which I was pretty shocked because, again, one of the most profitable and actually profitable as well as time-proven products out there, or you can debate it's a service, is insurance companies. I mean, it gives a lot of people peace of mind. Statistically speaking, you make more money than you pay out. That's how they profit and they grow. But they got rid of all their Globe Life stock, and they sold $96 million, 100% out. They also get rid of all their stock for Stone CO. That's 100%, $154 million sold out. Markle, MKL, that sold out, 100% gone, $230 million. Again, granted, I'm sure he's making a profit off of these, but I mean, that means he has a 0% stake in these companies now. It's all gone. You also have Paramount. Interesting enough, he decreased that, but not 100%. He decreased it by 32%. Now, that means they made $421 million in that sale, which, again, the streaming wars is a big thing. And, again, another precarious thing where a lot of those companies still aren't making money. Disney Plus is still not profitable. That perhaps being the most famous ones that isn't the default for many, which is Netflix or Amazon Prime. Not to brag that I like to say I'm part of the 1% of Americans who don't have Amazon Prime or Netflix. But I do have lots of books, which, depending on how old you are, we might have to define. It's like a magazine without pictures, and it's made of paper, which is what, if you go outside, the trees, they make the paper. But nevertheless, I digress. So they got rid of 32% of that. Now, another one that I saw was strange was a little curveball. He completely liquidated or sold off all the stock in D.R. Horton, which is one of the largest home manufacturers in the United States. They're a huge construction company. They make everything from single-family homes to whole neighborhoods. They'll construct them. I mean, Warren Buffett 100% sold their stock. So that's a pretty penny of money they got back. That sale is $774 million, which is quite a pretty penny to say the least. And I should clarify, a pretty vintage penny, which is made of actual copper and worth something. Modern pennies are 99.99% zinc, and then they're copper plated. So just a little scratch and you'll see the real worthlessness inside. Perhaps a sad metaphor for United States currency. But nevertheless, got rid of that. Now, in terms of Apple, again, they sold that. I was still pretty shocked to hear that, to say the least. So they sold 10 million Apple shares, which, again, now the headline sounds astronomical. Like, I mean, to me and you, granted, to have 10 million Apple shares, geez Louise, well, I love my little Honda Civic Si, so I would probably still own it and love it. But geez Louise, I would probably also get a couple vintage cool cars as well. But again, they only decreased their portfolio, their stake in Apple by 1%, which goes to show how much overwhelming value that they have of Apple stock in general for the whole Berkshire Hathaway portfolio. We'll break down the whole thing in a second here. Now, that came in at a sale of $1.8 billion. So they sold off 1% of their Apple stock. They got $1.8 billion. That is pretty penny, to say the least. They also decreased 78% of their stake in Hewlett-Packard, which, again, not the greatest branding in terms of Hewlett-Packard is now two separate publicly traded companies. You have the company that I used to be a part of, which is Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, which was servers, storage, and networking. So basically think of the enterprise things where, the Wi-Fi you see in some stores. Well, they bought Aruba Networks and rebranded that. But nevertheless, it was the infrastructure stuff that most businesses use and only a couple of people, tech enthusiasts would have at their actual homes. No one really has a server in their house. Well, except if you're Hillary Clinton, for reasons. I should clarify, just for the record, I do enjoy life and plan to live it to the fullest. Just throwing that out there. Now, again, they got $2.2 billion for the sale of, of the Hewlett-Packard stock. And those are some pretty big moves. Now, in terms of going to their overall portfolio, we'll do the top 10 in terms of valuation of their stock or the valuation of the portfolio. So if you look at the whole portfolio of Berkshire Hathaway, 44.8% of the portfolio is Apple stock. So they have 905,560 shares of Apple stock. They have a 5.9% stake of Apple. So of all the Apple stock out there, they own 5.9% of that. And with the current market value, now granted, by the time this video is rendered and uploaded on the internets, they'll fluctuate a little bit. But relatively speaking, that gives them a current Apple value of stock at $165,717,480,000, which is quite a lot to say the least. And you look at Warren's long-term investment strategies, and Apple is one of the best companies when it comes to building a brand and a culture around the brand. People will buy darn near anything they make as long as it has the Apple logo on it. And kind of like the Dallas Cowboys. Doesn't matter if they win or not. They will print money because they have the loyal fan base that believes in the brand, which is obviously a hugely important factor. There are actually people going out there and buying the nerd goggles that Apple makes called the Apple Vision 2, which costs more than, let's say, a moderately good used vehicle off them Craigslist. And yeah, those nerd goggles cost like $3,500 before tax, before warranty, and all that kind of stuff that you usually have to pay for. And people are still buying it. So Apple is hugely profitable. It's actually one of the most profitable tech companies on the planet. At least 2019, they were the most profitable company in the world, which is insane considering they make software and hardware. And they're more profitable than oil companies, pharmaceutical companies. Apple was the top dog a couple years ago. So an extremely impressive performing company when it comes to their books and a little bit of their technology, I would suppose. Now, the second stock that is the biggest in the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio is Bank of America, and that comes in at 9.5% of the portfolio of Berkshire Hathaway. This shows a huge stark contrast with how much they're invested in Apple and how much Warren Buffett believes in Tim Cook and Apple. Again, nearly half of the value of Berkshire Hathaway is in Apple stock. Now, in terms of the Bank of America, that comes in at 9.5% again, and they have geez Louise, I can't imagine having this many shares of a stock. 1,032,852,6 shares, and they have 13.1% of the share of the company. So of all the shares out there, they own 13.1%. That gives a market value of 35. Oh, that's almost sad compared to Apple. This is nothing. Only $35,116,968,204. Third company is American Express, which, again, one of the most time-proven companies out there. Spoiler alert, he has a couple financial firms that are very similar, Capital One, Visa, very consistent companies. Again, none of this is financial advice. I would always debate the best value you can get in terms of investing is bet on yourself by learning a new trade or starting a business, but I partially digress. So in terms of American Express, they own 20.9% of the company. So that's one of the largest companies that they own. They have one of the largest stakes. That's one of the biggest ones. Now, they own 151,610,700 shares of American Express, and that comes in at a value of $32,475,011,940. And they own, that's 8.8% of the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio. You also have Coca-Cola, which he's a longtime supporter. They have 400 million shares of Coca-Cola, owning 9.3% of the total company. And that gives them, it translates to 6.4% of the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio. In terms of the dollar amount, they have $23,776,000,000 worth of Coca-Cola shares of the company. You also have Chevron, which again, we just talked about a New York minute ago, and Occidental Petroleum. Then you have Kraft Heinz, which they own 26.5% of that company with 325,634,818 shares of the company, giving them a market value of $11,371,167,845, making up 3.1% of the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio. And then everything else drops precipitously. I mean, again, these are still, they own billions of dollars of these companies, but in terms of the percentage of the Berkshire Hathaway portfolio, we start to get into the, they have Moody's, Mitsubishi, that's 2%, and then everything else is 1%, a lot of 0.5%, a lot of 0.1%. So it'll be interesting to see. He made some big moves, and it's going to be a fascinating year when it comes to financial investments and a lot of markets that it's just unprecedented economic and political uncertainty. It'll be interesting to see which businesses flourish and which, unfortunately, may perish. Other interesting business news, you have Walmart thinking they might buy out Vizio. Now, Vizio is actually one of the few independent TV manufacturers out there. There used to be a lot more. Granted, spoiler alert, there's really two TV companies or manufacturers out there. There's a lot of OEM manufacturers or white label instances where if you look at who's actually manufacturing the technology and actually making the OLED or LED panels, I mean, Sony and LG have a huge percent of the market in terms of manufacturing it. Then, of course, other companies will pay them some money and they'll slap on a different logo. But spoiler alert, those are the two of the biggest manufacturers. Now, it looks like this came to us thanks to Emma Thorne over on LinkedIn. The rumor is that they are looking to buy a TV company for more than $2 billion in their attempt to expand into advertising businesses. Again, they say this is citing unnamed sources. If complete, the deal will give Walmart access to a trove of customer data and ad space that would help them compete with Amazon, which I was going to say, I might be a little biased here in terms of saying you don't need a TV. Granted, the TV I have is from my dad when he was in college. So I think it was 1983 it was manufactured. Sony Trentron, that thing is darn near bulletproof. It's never going to break, which is why I like some vintage tech that's just built a little bit more robust. But I partially digress. They note that most of Walmart's U.S. revenue comes from its grocery business, which, yeah, that's terrible. In terms of an investment, one of the worst, this is why I suspect we don't see any grocery startups in our lifetime. Most of the grocery stores we see, they're all started decades ago, some almost 100 years ago. And the percent for profit in grocery stores is about 2%, which is always hilarious when you have politicians saying they're making too much money. No, they might be making a lot of revenue, but the profit, it's so close to going out of business. It's quite concerning if you're an investor in those companies, which is why more and more of these companies are starting to add on things that you can buy that aren't just food. That's why Target has a whole section for clothes and TVs, same with Walmart. That's why they also have a pharmaceutical division at pretty much every grocery store as well, trying to increase the more profitable sales of more durable products. Because again, I mean, in some of the foods, they actually take a loss. There's a reason every grocery store I've seen in my lifetime, and if you think about it, milk is always at the back. Always. And it's usually at a loss in terms of they're losing money on that sale. It's what's known as a loss leader. So you go to the store, and because you have to walk all the way back to get to the actual milk that some people buy, excuse me, they are hoping and praying that you walk past something that is much more profitable and you see it and you think, hey, this is an impulse buy. Maybe I'll buy this. Maybe I'll buy some Bud Light. Well, no one would realistically say that. Maybe I'll buy some Yingling beer when I'm at the big box mart. So they're really hoping you'll actually spend money on more profit things. Then, of course, there's a jewelry section at all these stores, or many of these stores as well. So yeah, they're trying everything they can to get out of the having groceries as the biggest component there. Now, groceries are important because, granted, everyone needs groceries. But again, that's why they're trying to diversify more and more. Now, executives believe that the company's advertising business could be an effective moneymaker, and they also claim that the extra cash could be used to speed up shipping and other services. Now, they know that the U.S. ad revenue for retail media is expected to jump nearly 30% this year. Jeez Louise, that's to $59.6 billion per Insider Intelligence, which is quite a lot. They note that Amazon has a 17% market share of the operating systems in smart TVs, while Vizio has about 8% per Parks Associates. So I was going to say, that is not a bad idea. If you want to start competing more and more against Amazon, Vizio already has an 8%. That's not a bad idea. So I'll be interested to see if they pull the trigger on this, because again, Walmart, they see the writing on the wall. They see the market's always evolving. They have a very good historic track record of adopting new technologies. They're actually one of the first private companies in the United States to buy their own satellite, so they can more effectively run the stores and do inventory planning, logistics for trucks and products. One of my favorite books, truth be told, is Made in America by Sam Walton, and he is a genius. He was the founder of Walmart and, of course, Sam's Club as well. I read that, I want to say, two years ago now. Probably, I was going to say I never showed on the show, but I have a whole shelf of books. Let me know if you're ever interested in a book review. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think, again, given the direction, the direction Walmart wants to go and how much you can prospectively make from that, I suspect they'll choose to go through this because, again, for the long-term diversification of the company and an increasing, they just know the sales are already there, they're increasing, probably be a good business move. So I suspect they'll eventually go through that if they were to choose Vizio. Now, going over to the culture part of the podcast, you have the National MS Society firing a 90-year-old woman for not knowing pronouns. She had also volunteered for 60 years. And of course, there's some, not to be cliche, but it just happened to be a millennial young white gal who did the firing, apparently. Which, I don't know how heartless you have to be to fire grandma. And it's not, from the context I see, it doesn't appear to be she was even doing it on purpose. She just didn't understand. And again, I know some people, pronouns thing has become a huge debate in the United States from a cultural perspective. People brag about using them in some social media circles, while others will not acquiesce to using their preferred pronouns. And some people, it's just virtue signaling. And truth be told, it's a way to identify people of a certain mindset. So that's very true, like many identifying things. Now, this was first brought to us thanks to the libs of TikTok on X Twitter. And she says, quote, "Unreal. National MS Society forced 90-year-old volunteer to step down because she wasn't, quote, inclusive enough after she asked what pronouns are." the gal's name is Fran, and Fran had volunteered for 60 years, and her late husband had MS. The MS Society still hasn't said a word about this. Don't give them another penny until they do it. Which, yeah, I wouldn't either. If you fired grandma because she didn't understand this new concept that a lot of people are still debating around forced speech, which in some countries, if you don't use someone's preferred pronouns, you will be fined or jailed. It's not conspiracy theory. It's happened in other countries, and with the adoption rate of certain legal laws, I mean, there's a big trend of laws coming and being enforced in good old Canada, then being migrated to California, and then being forced around the rest of the United States. It's happened with many subjects, so it's not out of the realm, though we do have the First Amendment, which some Americans still believe in, thankfully. Now, this letter is from Callie Kumor, who is the manager of community engagement, she, her, in her signature, and this is the heartless, morally vacuous letter she sent to this grandma. She says, quote, "Dear Fran, I hope this email finds you well. We appreciate your dedication and contribution as self-help group leader with our organization. As we disclosed earlier during our phone conversation, although after a thorough review of our guidelines and standards, it has come to our attention that there has been a failure to abide by our diversity, equity, and inclusion guidelines during your time as volunteer. Unfortunately, based on the situation, we have made the difficult decision to have you step down from your volunteer position effective immediately. Although the Lakewood Beach Self-Help Group will no longer be formally affiliated with our organization, we want to emphasize that it does not mean the end of your group activities. You are still more than welcome to continue meeting independently from the society. While your role as a volunteer is going to end, we want to emphasize that you and the group are still welcome to attend and participate the Society's events and programs. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. We appreciate the time and effort dedicated to our organization, and we sincerely hope you understand the necessity of this decision. We wish you the best in your future endeavors and hope to see you at Walk MS. Thank you for understanding. Sincerely. Sincerely, Callie Kumar, Manager, Community Engagement, she, her, National Multiple Sclerosis Society, 5150 Goldie Circle, Suite 400, Los Angeles, California. Phone number 310-481-1132, internal plus 66132. Again, direct line is 310-481-1132. This is one of the most morally vacuous things that I've read about in quite some time, which, again, that's actually saying something considering modern society from a cultural perspective seem to be precipitously declining and decaying more and more. Perhaps this just shoots a little bit close to home since I've had friends and family who have been affected by MS throughout my lifetime, and we've done similar walks like this throughout our life. And MS is a terrible, heartbreaking thing to have someone go through, and we do need to raise funds for research and development. Subsequently, I wouldn't recommend giving funds to this particular organization because of how disgustingly heartless they are. Again, they fired grandma for not understanding a relatively extremely new cultural trend in the United States. She asked, what were they? Really? That is, I would never give this organization a penny. And apparently Miss Callie Kumor is already hiding because she had a LinkedIn page. So let me just fact check that really quick and let's look it up in real time. So that's Kelly. Let's see here. Callie. K-A-L-Y. K-A-L-Y. Then Kumar. K-U. Oh, if I could spell it, usually helps. K-U-M-O-R. U-M-O-R. So close to humor, but she has no humor, obviously. And it's a ridiculous name. Kumar. It's also ridiculous as having a name like Topping. Oh, wait. Nevertheless, it looks like she has indeed deleted her profile on LinkedIn because, interestingly enough, there's not. Yeah. Callie Kumar. K-U-M. Yeah, it looks like she does not show up. Interesting. Guess we shouldn't be too surprised. Now, granted, perhaps I'm alone with this assessment. Maybe everyone thinks, yeah, we should fire grandma. She wasn't progressive enough. Maybe I don't think so, but let's dive in the comments and find out. And again, this went viral a couple days ago. We got 7 million views in the first 24 hours. That went viral to say the least. And also got 25,000 likes. Now, going to the top comments. Let's see here. Lives a TikTok says, quote, I spoke with Fran about the National MS Society forcing her to step down over pronouns usage. Watch her interview, which we'll probably have to check that out in a couple days. Let's see here. So going down to the first comment. see here. Paul Zazupa says, quote, "This is an assault on the right of free speech. You can't require someone to say words. It's even more ridiculous when the words are required by ridiculous. In summary, the left is ridiculous," unquote. Getting 1,000 likes. Now, it looks like the actual MS Society, I'm curious, let me check it really quick, because technically if it's a private organization, let's see, National MS Society, they're a nonprofit, so they have nonprofit status. Let's see here. If they're connected to the government, then you could for sure sue them for your right to free speech. But if it's a private organization, I don't think that would stand. Now, obviously, they're still morally, mentally vacuous, and culturally speaking, I hope they're ostracized appropriately. Now, going down to other comments, you have Libercrat Media TM says, quote, "Shame on you, hashtag MS Society." And it's a GIF, sorry, as the youth might say, a GIF of someone saying, "Raise your hand if you're tired of this shit," getting 1.4 thousand likes. Craig Chamberlain says, quote, "The cult isn't about inclusion. They're about excluding anyone who is a threat to their narcissistic power grabs," unquote, getting 1.1 thousand likes. Let's see, Common Sense Prevails says, quote, "How dare she?" And then it's a picture of Norm Macdonald, one of the goats of comedy, and the text says, quote, "DEI, or diversity, equity, inclusion, is just a polite way to say dumb, entitled idiot," unquote, getting 713 likes. Let's see here. Right-angle political news network says, quote, "The left has absolutely lost the plot in pushing away every single rational person from their movement. They have allowed woke nonsense to take full control over everything. People are fed up with it." And it goes on for a couple paragraphs. Got 471 likes. Terry Prentice says, quote, "Don't really see how this action helps the MS Society in reaching their goal of helping people with MS. DEI is just another expression of bigotry and racism," unquote, getting 318 likes. Now, I wonder if they knew this was going to blow up in their face for people who are politically in the middle or on the right, but maybe this will increase funding by people who are very, very much in favor of firing grandma and being in favor of the DEI and the pronouns. Because again, there are a lot, especially, there's a lot of tech billionaires who agree with that. So, obviously, I don't recommend giving them a penny more until they either fire the person who fired grandma, hire her back on with a big apology. I don't think those things will happen, but I wonder if overall will their funding stay break even, go down, or go up? Now, they are also, as youth might say, getting ratioed in multiple ways. So, National MS Society, on Valentine's Day, they tried to tweet something. Didn't go well. So they say on National Valentine's Day last week, they said, quote, "Happy Valentine's Day. Whether you're celebrating self-love, love of a partner, or love of family and friends, we hope the day is filled with joy." And the pictures, no way. So the pictures are very, as youth might say, progressive. One is of a guy with, and again, I'm not trying to, I don't think it's dead naming if you're not, that's the name thing. One's what looks like to be a straight guy, and then is with a girl with a mohawk, and she's dressed similarly. We have another cliche picture of a girl with "I need help." It's not tattooed on her forehead. That's what I see when I actually see the nose ring in the middle. They have one of those with a gay couple, and then the other picture is, they do have one traditional picture in terms of a man and a woman together, and they got 135,000 views, only 70 likes, which is terrible to say the least. And the first comment comes from Morgan McColvin and says, "Not one more dime," unquote. And this person posted a screenshot of Lives of TikTok breaking the story. That got 2.1 thousand likes. Rob replied saying, quote, if you let the lady go, you're not inclusive." That got 2.6 thousand likes. Political Sock, though the picture is in fact of a gentleman, not a sock, but nevertheless it's a alleged sock, says, quote, "How about the love you showed you guys to an elderly woman who you fired because she didn't understand gender pseudoscience pronouns," unquote. They got 3.8 thousand likes. CJ's Thoughts says, "I will never donate another dollar for what you did to that poor woman. Just disgusting," unquote. They got 2.5 thousand likes. Alaska Blues says, quote, "I have ceased my annual donation. You know what you did," unquote, getting 1.4 thousand likes. Chief Newspeak Editor says, quote, "Just don't prefer Just don't refer to someone with the wrong pronouns or we'll fire you, even if you're unpaid, because we're fascist, unquote, getting 1.6 thousand likes. Which again, with certain industries and certain nonprofits, it is hard to get volunteers. It's a full-time job just finding people to volunteer and help with them. And this isn't going to help that because, again, there's no scenario where I would ever donate to them directly or volunteer for them directly. I would donate directly to a family member or a certain different nonprofit that is supporting the same subject of MS. That I would highly encourage because, again, people do need help for that detrimental that detrimental disease, and it is an important thing. But this organization, there's no way I would give them another penny. Not even a modern penny, which is 99.99% zinc and only a little bit copper plated. It's basically trash. So not even that. It actually, although ironically, I mean, if you give someone a penny these days, it's almost more of an insult than anything else. Another one comes from Kristen Franklin saying, quote, so a 90-year-old woman who has volunteered for years and probably been kind, caring, respectful, and given a lot of their time for your organization does not qualify under inclusive for you. Disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful, unquote, getting 138 likes. Let's see here. Yeah, I follow a couple people who you would be considered far left on X Twitter just so that their responses show up when I follow some of these hot topic issues. Interestingly enough, I'm not seeing those people here, and I'm trying to see if there's anyone who agrees with it. Again, there are people who agree with this action, because again, there are some people dedicated to what you would call that a cause, or that would be phrased as a cause. So there are people who certainly agree with the actions of the MS Society by firing grandma because she didn't know what pronouns were. Now, fascinatingly enough, let's see here. I'm not seeing anything in the comments that shows they exist. And again, this is actually from the MS Society. So this sample size of people who are viewing this should be people who previously donated, they're interested in the company or nonprofit. And yeah, everything is saying, a lot of people are saying ageism, a lot of people are saying shame on you, never donate a dime. I mean, yeah, I think culturally speaking, we're going to start to see the pendulum shift a little bit, especially when you see things like this when, again, she's 90 years old and she volunteered 60 years of her life to that organization. And that's how they end it? A phone call and an email to fire them? I'm nearly speechless with how viscerally disgusting the MS Society is in this action. And it'll be interesting to see, again, will their donations dry up? Will you have a couple of big donors who are, again, people who are more politically left? Will their donations offset the ones that they're going to lose? I mean, I know a lot of people who spend their time volunteering and raising money. I mean, if you look at the statistics on who donates more in terms of when you break it down into a political affiliation, people on the right do tend to donate more than people on the left on average. So I suspect this will have a more detrimental effect, as this has, oddly enough, become a political issue in the United States as well as a cultural issue. It's kind of, we've seen it's kind of broken down, relatively speaking, in terms of the quote-unquote sides of the scenario into a political thing. So I'll be interested to see how much this dings their actual donations. But yeah, I can't think of anything worse than firing grandma. Again, she's 90 years old and gave 60 years of her life for the cause and helping people and for that nonprofit. So who knows? Maybe they'll do the right thing and apologize profusely and do something. But I was going to say, perhaps we need to do a cancel culture blunder of the day, or the more morally vacuous thing of the day, because this certainly qualifies for those criteria. Going over to the political part of the podcast, you have Vivek on the NSA not wanting to get a warrant for every spying instance. Now, this comes to us, there's originally a video posted by RNC Research, and they said, and it says all on X Twitter, they said, quote, NSA Jake Sullivan was amending the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act to require a, quote, warranty for every query of lawful collected data, and they say, quote, we don't believe that serves the national security interests of the United States, unquote. That's what the NSA is saying. Yeah, accountability does not serve the United States. Which, funny enough, I think, is it the Pentagon has never passed an audit when you look at their finances and their books. Yeah, if we underpay our taxes by $1, not only are we fined for that, we actually pay interest on the money that we owe. Whereas if the government owes us money because we overpaid on our taxes, they just give us a check. You don't get any interest. They got the benefit of using your money for basically free. Now, Vivek, and I'll play the video first before we go over Vivek's response. I think thankfully it's only about 34 seconds long, so not, or sorry, 54 seconds long, so not too bad. So I'll go ahead and play that without too much further ado.
On FISA, there are a couple of amendments that are being considered. One of them would require a warrant for every query of lawfully collected data. If that were to pass and get into the bill, would the president veto that bill?
So I'm not in a position to stand here today and make veto threats on behalf of the president. Those are decisions for him to make. What I will tell you is that we do not believe that that serves the national security interests of the United States. And in fact, today I will be making that case to a number of members that the warrant requirement as conceived is not the best way actually to ensure the protection of the personal privacy of Americans. There are a number of other elements of the bill that we have supported that would reform and update FISA to protect the civil liberties of Americans. But a warrant requirement from our perspective would go too far in undermining the very purpose of FISA, and frankly it would put victims at risk.
And always use the emotional threat at the end. Be like, oh, it put them at risk. Yeah. Requiring a warrant is now considered a bad thing, which shows you how much the United States has declined and how viciously sad and disgusted our founding fathers would be if they were to see the horrific thing it's become. Now, Vivek responded saying, quote, it's never good when there are repeated vague murmurings about national security interests from the government without an iota of detail or experience about why, unquote. Which, again, as the British might say, spot on. As well as this is where, very similar to the TSA, there's very little evidence that really all the invasive buying practices by United States citizens have done much good at all. I mean, they say it is, but it's not a very good argument. And truth be told, the Patriot Act, a lot of people say there's a nail in the coffin for private security and civil rights. And truth be told, I think they were true and they were accurate in that statement. And yeah, just kind of more disappointment on a federal level. I don't think we should be too surprised. Now, this did get 603,000 views and 16,000 likes. It's not quite as viral as most of Vivek's moments, but still an important note nevertheless, because again, it's going to have huge implications on anyone in the world having a semblance of privacy. Now, some of the top comments, actually the first one comes from one of the favorite contrarians. Well, we don't really like him, but appreciate additional information and different perspectives. So that's why I follow Luke Zaleski, and he was responding saying, quote, the volume of disinformation you are being subjected to thanks to Elon and Tucker and Elon's X-state news feeds is unprecedented. You're experiencing the largest continual propaganda machine and hostile takeover attempt in history. It's enough to make Mao roll over in his grave, unquote. Now, as mentally vacuous as that might be, 12 people did agree with that, and there's nothing more hilarious or ironic than someone who's far left making references to Mao and communism and dictatorships, considering many of their policies want to replicate the most horrific policies that led to the most horrific acts in history. Now, again, 12 people did like that, oddly enough. Perhaps they were inebriated or drinking a bottle of Bud Light, heaven forbid. But yeah, it's funny. He says, you're being forced to this disinformation. Last time I checked, no one's forcing you to be on X Twitter, Luke. Truth be told, Luke is actually paying to be on X Twitter because he has a cool little blue check mark. Which, not to brag, but I also have $8 a month to spend on X Twitter. Granted, I do it partially just to support having the freedom of speech because, again, it's one of the very few. I would actually argue it's the only. Rumble is a social media platform in a different way, but it's one of the very few social media platforms that really does believe in free speech. Can't help but notice every time I'm on the Facebook, every once in a while I'll look through some of the meme groups and I'll see a meme. It'll be funny. When I click on it, it'll say, oh, it's gone. Maintenance. It's because there's just certain things you're not allowed to make fun of. If you're making fun of Christians, of course, yeah, Catholic jokes, oh yeah, those will never get censored. But other topics, the ones that we're talking about, those will always be protected. Now, going to the other top comments comes from Right Angle News Network. Say, quote, they will do anything, including faking a national threat, so that they can employ mass surveillance and mass censorship before the 2020 election to prevent Donald Trump from winning. The globalists will stop at nothing to prevent Donald Trump from holding them accountable. Unquote, getting 129 likes. Dave Benner, nemesis of neocons, says, quote, when they say they want to preserve national security, they really mean they want to preserve their domestic dystopia where your rights can be violated with impunity, unquote. And that got 100 likes. Though, in full transparency, I was one of the people who did like that. Let's see here. We got Planet of Memes, who, I was going to say marketing fail, but they responded in text only, not a meme or something called a meme. Their name is Planet of Memes. So let's say this alleged Planet of Memes. They say, quote, sounds like fear-mongering to encourage Republicans to vote for the wasteful bill the Senate just passed, which secures every border of our own, unquote, gave 50 likes. And yeah, Republicans can be pretty disappointing. There are a lot of rhinos, pejoratively known as Republicans in name only, where they ran a Republican, they have that little R next to their name on the ballot, but a lot of policies and their actual actions are more Democrat, which, again, I'm one of those people where I don't like false advertising. Let me know what you are so I could vote for you appropriately, which is why I always tell people, if you like a candidate, don't like them just because there's a letter next to their name. Look at their policies and their background to see if there's actually something to support their whatever party they claim to be with. Scrolling down a couple more comments here, we have Bad Hombre say, quote, the expectations is you'll default into drone mode, infer it's about Russia, panic, and ask the government to protect you, getting 21 likes. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any other contrarian statements. A lot of people are just saying 110%. We agree with Vivek. No more mass surveillance. And we do have one contrarian, Burt Macklin, alleged Burt Macklin. I think he's a fictional character on Parks Regulation. He says, quote, shouldn't you be pumping and dumping farmer stock? Unquote, getting 5 likes. I don't know how much, I don't think there's any truth to that, but there were 5 likes. Dalton Sutton says, quote, because the majority of national security is just political security, unquote, getting 8 likes. So, Socrates Ghost said, where are the WMDs in Iraq again, quote, getting 1 like. So a lot of people are agreeing with him. Perhaps one of the best ratios for Vivek. And it'll be interesting to see if this bill, if it does pass, and see, how many of our rights are taken away again. I mean, let's just say when it comes to, keeping our civil liberties and our rights, I'm not confident the vote will be favorable for the American public. But as I always say, time shall tell. Other interesting political news, you have Tucker Carlson, Moscow subway versus New York subway going viral, to say the least. Now, Tucker Carlson being the GOAT, I would say, in pretty much every regard when it comes to news and reporting. He recently went to Russia to interview Vladimir Putin, and that was one of his most viral interviews, getting over 200 million views on X Twitter, and showed that allowed Americans to see a perspective that we're not allowed to see on other outlets where they're censoring pretty much all Russian information, or rather, information that shows Russia in any neutral or positive light. Now, when he was over in Russia, he actually went on the subway, and you couldn't help but notice it was almost like a work of art. Whereas subways in the United States, which are more often than not public entities or entities that are controlled by the government, I don't know if it's a coincidence, but they're all, what's a nice word, saying dog crap? Crumbling, decrepit, union run. They're garbage, basically. Usually filled with garbage, rats, people overdosing on drugs. And he goes to Russia, and they have works of art on the walls. Like legit paintings and works of art. And fascinatingly enough, no one's vandalizing them. It's all very clean. So a lot of people are starting to talk about the stark culture contrasts between a lot of cities in America versus cities in Russia. And it's not too long, only got about 3 minutes long, but it did get 17.6 million views and 149,000 likes, which is some of the most likes he's got, bar none. And those statistics were recorded actually 24 hours after 48 hours after it was posted. So the numbers had time to brew, so to say. So I'll go ahead and without further ado, play that clip really quick.
One of the ways you understand a society is through its infrastructure, the places where people gather, the places where they go to travel. If you've got a lot of people in one place, it tells you a lot about the people. So with that in mind, we're standing in front of the Kievskaya metro station, and there's a train station next to it. Now, the metro station was built by Joseph Stalin 70 years ago. And the question is, how's it doing now, after 70 years? So we went into it to take a look, and what we found shocked us. Now, that's not an endorsement of Stalin, who was bad, obviously, nor is it an endorsement of the current president, Vladimir Putin. You may not like him either. But it doesn't change the reality of what we saw, or more precisely, didn't see. There's no graffiti, there's no filth, there are no foul smells, there are no bums, or drug addicts, or rapists, or people waiting to push you onto the train tracks and kill you.
Which was a viral thing in the United States. Thugs pushing people into moving trains. And they passed away. And of course, the district attorneys in most of the cities did nothing. A lot of them actually let them walk. Scot-free, as some might say.
No. It's perfectly clean and orderly. And how do you explain that? We're not even going to guess. That's not our job. We're only going to ask the question. And if your response is to shout at us slogans dumber than the slogans we used to call Soviet and mock, that's not really an answer. How does Russia, a country we're told is a gas station with nuclear weapons, have a subway station that normal people use to get to work and home every single day that's nicer than anything in our country? We're not going to speculate. We're just going to raise the question and wait for someone in charge to give us an answer. What is the answer? So we'll stop the lecture and let you take a look for yourself at what the Kievskaya metro station in Moscow, Russia looks like today, February 2024, in the middle of a war. Here it is.
Say that's pretty loud, and it looks beautiful. They have paintings as well as, I think they're actually mosaics, and they have gorgeous gold frames, which again, they have chandeliers. Again, if you put a chandelier or a gold plated anything in United States urban subways, they'd be gone in a New York minute, pun intended. Let's see here, going down more and more. It looks breathtaking to say the least. And of course, as they say, go to TuckerCarlson.com to see the whole, his whole experience of going around and being a tourist in Russia. Excuse me. But yeah, it's a stark contrast between subways in the United States or any public transportation in the United States, to say the least. And yeah, there are probably a myriad of reasons. I would say cultural in terms of the people, as well as the government entities, the United States and the unions. There's many reasons why, public transportation is a joke. But let's dive in the comments. Let's see what people have to say. Now, Paul Suzupa says, quote, Moscow cities are glorious. New York City subways are toilets. That says everything, unquote. That got 3.5 thousand likes. Now we have our favorite leftist, or some way, no, he's a leftist. Luke Zaleski chimes in again, and he says, quote, we went from no collusion to Putin is the leader of the free world and the Republican Party 7 years. Right-wing propaganda plus Elon, Trump, Tucker, and Russian defamation is the strongest mind-altering drug ever. Another couple of years, and we will have all left as a country? Is all we have left as a country, unquote. 179 likes. Well, granted, it is Luke, so it's mostly mentally vacuous and moronic, to say the least. But, again, why does it look so impeccably beautiful over there in terms of that subway? And again, it's not the whole country. There's certainly some areas that probably are not as nice. But have you been to Chicago O'Hare Airport or the New York subway in the past decades? When was the last time you went in and it was clean, safe, nice environment? I don't know. Truth be told, maybe it was never that good to begin with. Now, the recording says, quote, well, Tucker, I heard those trains were always on time, unquote, getting 439 likes. One bad dude says, quote, unquote, Fox made a huge mistake, and it's a endless line of people lining up to see Tucker Carlson, and the booth next to him is Fox News, and there's no one tuning in, which is an apt metaphor considering how much the viewership has crashed ever since Tucker Carlson left. And Tucker, as an individual, granted, I'm sure he has employees, he has the Tucker Carlson network, it is a business, that gets more views and likes than Fox News any time of the day. Now, that got 4.9 thousand likes. Libercat Media TM says, quote, beyond true, and is a picture of Putin, and the text is, why would I attack America? You already have Democrats for that, unquote. They got 6.2 thousand likes, which is one of the top ones to say the least. Let's see here. Scrolling down, there's a lot of videos of people showing off other Russian subways, which are, again, it is so foreign. It is clean. There's not bottles and garbage and trash on the ground. It's clean. People, we also weigh half as much. One of those videos got 3.9 thousand likes. Let's see here. Z Van Fleet says, quote, Moscow subway stations are legendary. They deeply impress me, although not the Soviet propaganda art. But when I traveled to small towns outside Moscow and St. Petersburg, I saw the Russia that stuck in Soviet time. I was shocked seeing antique-looking buses still in operation. In Russia, Moscow, and St. Petersburg, we are modern and well-run, but not small towns. In America, it is totally opposite, and we know why. Unquote, getting 1.6 thousand likes. It's also a stark contrast between, good old reliable vehicles when they're darn near bulletproof. It's fascinating to see how much of that old tech still works and runs like a champ these days. Let's see here. Scrolling down, trying to find some contrarian statements. SL Canthan says, quote, Tucker Carlson, great job and congrats for keeping an open mind. You should go to China. Here are some subways, metro stations in Shanghai, Beijing, and Shenzhen, and more. And China also has authoritarian state, and the people there are, well, culturally speaking, the people are quite different as well. They got 2.1 thousand likes. Marjorie Taylor Greene press release parody account says, quote, stay safe, Tucker. You don't want to get Hillaried, unquote. They got 2.2 thousand likes, and is a reference to Hillary Clinton having a abnormal statistics in terms of an improbable high amount of people who she knew and were not friendly with. They just all committed suicide. Like, statistically way too many than normal. Like, we're not talking one or two, we're talking dozens. For the record, I should say out loud, I love life and I'm going to do my best to live it to the fullest for as long as possible. Just for the record. I mean, this is all allegations. I'm sure Hillary Clinton is honest as every politician out there. I will digress. Going down. Real Defender says, quote, bottom line, liberals are destroying American cities, unquote, getting 2.3 thousand likes. Which, fascinatingly enough, Chicago has been run by Democrats for nearly 100 years. Now, truth be told, I'm trying to remember when was the last time the city was actually clean and safe. They'll be good next year, I'm told. Just like the Chicago Bears. They'll be a good sports balls team next year. I mean, statistically, no, but, perhaps probably the most upside bet. What are the odds, like in Las Vegas odds for betting on the sports balls team, the Chicago Bears? Can't help but think it'd be astronomical. Let's see here. A lot of pictures showing off all their subways in Russia where, again, they look immaculate. I'm trying to see if there's someone, again, as this is a political issue in many ways, I'm surprised there's not someone who, again, probably be more politically left who really hates Russia. I'm surprised there's no one having a video of, like, finding some trash out there or some decrepit part of the subway in Russia. I mean, again, I'm going through this and trying to see if there's anything like that. But no. Then someone actually has a picture of Bernie Sanders standing in Russia, getting 128 likes, saying that's exactly what Bernie Sanders used to do in terms of taking the train, I guess. Let's see here. American Partisan, well, this is mentally vacuous. He says, maybe Stalin wasn't that bad, unquote. I got 177 likes, and unfortunately, he has not read a history book, apparently. Or maybe he just can't. Maybe he tried to read the history book and he couldn't read. Stalin was one of those evil men in history. It's almost unfathomable to comprehend that statement made by the American Partisan. Now, Chief Nerd said, quote, but do they have... Chief Nerd again says, but do they have the fragrant urine odor of the New York City subways, unquote, getting 934 likes. You also have people getting attacked on New York subways and going to jail for defending themselves and defending others. Let's see here. So as youth might... And then, of course, you have a couple pictures of St. Petersburg and the iconic buildings over there, which, again, I have family members who are architects, so I grew up looking at all different types of architecture over the globe. It is some of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen in picture. Let's see here. So, yeah, it went viral to say the least. And, again, unfortunately, I don't think this is going to inspire Americans to change culturally and be like, oh, yeah, maybe we should not throw the trash on the ground like a mentally, morally vacuous piece of dirt. But, yeah, it was interesting to see the political differences between state-run and government-run public entities, and such as subway systems, and the way the public also treats those entities as well. And again, one of the most politically hot issues is Tucker actually going to Russia. So it'll be interesting to see, does this resonate with more people? Does the U.S. actually do anything to improve their infrastructure? I mean, again, I think the odds are probably akin to the odds that the Chicago Bears will win a sports balls Super Bowl in the next 20 years. I mean, it's not zero, but probably 0.00000000017. Probably around that percentage. Now going over to the business blunder of the day, you have Delta forced to land a plane because of maggots in the overhead bin. And I'm not using a pejorative term like someone is being a maggot. No, I mean the actual bug. Now, again, this comes to us thanks to NBC 5 Chicago. They note that, quote, maggots rained down on Delta passengers from overhead bin, forcing the flight to return to Amsterdam, unquote. They note that flight attendants tracked the maggots to an overhead compartment where they found rotting fish wrapped in newspaper inside one of the bags. Which, again, we were talking on the show earlier about mentally vacuous people. Who thought to wrap fish in newspaper? Do they not understand hygiene or basic biology of how food breaks down? That's almost unfathomably stupid. Now, they note that I just can't believe it. So it was going, I guess we shouldn't be too surprised. The flight was headed to Detroit from Amsterdam when the plane was forced to turn around after an hour after departing. And Pastor Philip Scott says, quote, told WJBK TV in Detroit, during the flight, he looked across the aisle and saw freaking out as maggots fell on top of a woman. The woman, Scott said, was trying to kind of fight off the maggots, unquote, which I don't know how you do that. Now, of course, when they asked for comment, Delta said, quote, we apologize to the customers of Flight 137 on February 13th as their trip was interrupted due to the improperly packed carry-on bag, unquote. The aircraft returned to the gate and the customers were, geez Louise, the aircraft was removed from service for cleaning. I can't imagine that. So you had to rain down or have been forcing the flight to return to Amsterdam, which, again, I guess that's a long flight. You don't want to be on a flight for hours on end with maggots, but again, that's just seemingly unfathomably stupid. How do you bring on the fish? So I don't know how Delta is running as a company. Granted, in terms of the historical uses of Delta Airlines and in terms of their public relations, I suppose this isn't as bad as beating the crap out of a doctor, which they did a couple years ago when a man refused to give up his seat that he paid for, which they did beat the crap out of him, as the youth might say. Not a very sophisticated way of saying that they assaulted a passenger. So that was pretty bad PR. This is not worse, but again, not good business practices to allow that type of thing on the plane. And then, yeah, now you hit all these hundreds. Again, there's quite a few people who fly on the plane. It's not just 12 people. It's not a private plane. These commercial airlines have hundreds of passengers. You ruined all their trip and, ruined their day. Now, if they do the right thing, they have to pay for vouchers in terms of if they need to stay for a hotel or transportation to get to a hotel. So needless to say, having maggots on the plane, that is certainly the business blunder of the day. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in again. We're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of February, so if you click that button, I greatly appreciate it. Also, sharing the video is a great way to assist me growing the audience, and giving me a thumbs up, thumbs down, or just leaving a comment gives me some additional feedback on how I can make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.